Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second virtual launch party for the 8th edition of Best Writing. I will be your host for the evening and my afternoon because I'm joining you all the way from Canada. My name is Safin Baez. I am an electrical engineering graduate of Texas A&M University at Qatar, but most importantly, I am the loudest and the proudest member of the Fighting Texas Aggie class of 2021. Woo! I've been wanting to do this ever since I graduated. The theme for this year's edition is moving forward. These are two words of encouragement and empowerment, but sometimes these are words that you just don't want to hear. My entire senior year was in the pandemic with strict restrictions then now. I didn't have a graduation and all I heard was move on. But it was one of the most special moments of my life and I didn't get to experience that and I had to move on. Moving forward is difficult. In my senior year, there's always in every senior year, there's always an uncertainty about life after graduation. And with pandemic, it was even scarier. Moving forward was difficult. Have you ever been in situations where you had to move on, but life kept you pulling backwards? How do you move forward then? Well, we have all managed to move forward in this pandemic, and we're still moving forward. I, for myself, managed to move forward, pursuing a master's degree on the other side of the world. This edition of Best Writing consists of empowering, educative, and entertaining stories of our Aggie community moving forward. Keeping the theme in mind, we will now be moving forward to the next segment of the evening. Before we move on, let me remind you that the event is being recorded. While the speakers are presenting, please mute your microphones to avoid any disruptions from your background. To show your appreciation for the speakers and for me, you may use the reactions or you can type in the chat. Now, please try to follow along with me. If you're joining the meeting from your laptop or desktop, what you see on your screen right now is the slides, and on the other side, you see my face. So the screen is divided into two sections, the slides and my face. So there is a line or a divider dividing these two sections. You can click on that divider and drag it along on the other side to enlarge the speaker view. To enhance your experience as a viewer, you may consider to enlarge the view of the speakers based on your convenience. I hope everyone was able to follow with that. With that being said, now I welcome our Dean, Dr. Sirza Malave, to address the gathering.
Thank you, Safin. Thank you very much. And howdy to all of you and all the students, and welcome to this great event. I'm glad to be here to launch the 2021 edition of the Best Writing, celebrating the talent and creativity of Aggie engineers. Okay. Celebrating the talent and creativity of Aggie engineers who are critical and creative thinkers and writers. Aggies in Qatar aren't just students of engineering. They are also students of life. Best Writing shows that there is a lot more to engineers than just math and science. There is also creativity, innovation, and passion. We pride ourselves in creating well-rounded engineers who will lead Qatar's transformation into a modern, knowledge-based economy. Our success and the success of Best Writing depends on the relationships our teachers have developed with their students. So I would like to thank our faculty members who are instrumental in supporting our students and who encourage them to submit their work. I would also like to congratulate Dr. Misty who came up with the idea of this book and whose passion for writing and for our students has driven this project for the past 8 editions. And most of all, I would like to thank each of our author students who were brave enough to submit their work to Best Writing. Congratulations to those of you whose work was chosen for publication. We are proud to celebrate with you tonight, and we look forward to celebrating each of your many future success. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Malave, for making our gathering more special with your presence. Let me now welcome Dr. Bilal Mansour, Assistant Professor in the Mechanical Engineering Program and Director of the Center for Teaching and Learning. Dr. Mansour.
Thank you, Safin. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Malave, for your kind remarks. Some of you may not know, but this is the 8th year or the 8th edition of the best writing, which in itself is a milestone and an achievement. And I must admit that I wasn't really involved in one of the few of the events that took place before a couple of events ago. But for me, what I've noticed now is that best writing, the way it has helped our students recognize the power of writing, it just seems amazing to me that how they grow when they start getting involved in different forms of creative expression. And I understand that, you know, since its inception, this sort of movement has grown, and now the best writing also includes other forms of expressions like photography and painting and videos. So more power to you guys. I think this is amazing, and I must congratulate again Dr. Rudd. She did an amazing job at the CTL, but also creating and then keep fueling this movement. I mean, this is just unbelievable. 8 years of fantastic work. And then encouraging and coaching all our student writers. It takes a lot of effort. And to be able to give them the confidence that they're willing to publish their POWs, right, Misty? That's what you call them, powerful pieces of writing. So to me, this is special. It's obviously a new sort of beginning for us as well, that now it's a collaboration between CTL and the liberal arts. And this year's best writing was sort of special for us from another perspective, which was because it was done during COVID and it was so hard to go through this tumultuous year. So I think overall, I am for one just going to sit back and relax and listen to all our great speakers, some of them who I know are from the CTL, some of our SI leaders and tutors, especially those. For example, Sarah, I know, is going to be presenting, Afsha, Amina. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I know that moving forward is the theme. So let's move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mansour. On behalf of the Best Writing Committee, I would like to wholeheartedly thank you for supporting this initiative. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Joseph Ura, former chair of the Liberal Arts Program, to enlighten the gathering with his words.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me all right. It's obviously been a busy week here at Texas A&M University and at Qatar. And as the kind of unexpected events of the last few days have unfolded, I have found myself thinking about what exactly it is that our university and really any university is meant to do, and what exactly it is that we and I ought to be doing with ourselves here in Qatar. And as is often the case, for me anyway, I look to the past to understand the present. And in this case, I looked back to the legacy of one of the most important Americans that maybe many of you have never heard of, and his name is Justin Morrill. Justin Morrill was born in Vermont in 1810. His father was a blacksmith, and he himself only ever had the equivalent of an elementary school education. But as a young man, he had the opportunity to serve in a clerkship in a successful business venture. He found success in himself in commerce and then in politics. and he was eventually elected to the United States Congress in 1854. He would go on to serve in the House of Representatives through the Civil War until 1867, and when he took a seat in the United States Senate that he held until his death in 1898. He was the longest serving member of Congress for the first century and a half of American history. He was one of the founders of the Republican Party. He was the architect of the nation's 19th century tax system. He was one of the leading authors of the 14th Amendment. But he's best known and most important, and certainly nearest to us here tonight, as the author of the Land Grant Colleges Act, which often is known to history with his name, the Morrill Act. The Morrill Act, which was passed in 1862 with the approval of President Abraham Lincoln, authorized the transfer of lands owned by the federal government in the United States to the individual states to be sold, so that the proceeds could be used, and I quote from the legislation, for the endowment, support, and maintenance of at least one college, where the leading object shall be, without excluding other scientific and classical studies, and including military tactics, to teach such branches of learning as are related to agriculture and the mechanical arts in such a manner as the legislatures of the states may respectively prescribe, in order to promote the liberal and practical education of the industrial classes in the several pursuits and professions of life. The Land Grant Colleges Act, it is safe to say, is among the most important pieces of law passed in the history of the United States. And in that respect, also perhaps one of the most important pieces of legislation in the modern history of the world. It's the seed that grew into the Agricultural and Mechanical College of Texas, and that has blossomed today into Texas A&M University. In 1888, just 10 years before his death, although while he continued to serve in the United States Senate, Justin Morrill explained that the fundamental idea of the law was, and again I quote, to offer an opportunity in every state for a liberal and larger education to larger numbers, not merely to those destined to sedentary professions, but to those needing higher instruction for the world's business, for the industrial pursuits and professions of life. In other words, the fundamental founding impulse at the root of land grant colleges and at the heart of Texas A&M is the idea that farmers and engineers have just as much right and just as much reason to benefit from a liberal and larger education as lawyers, bankers, merchants, and other folks engaged in sedentary professions. And beyond that, in a growing nation, in a burgeoning democracy, right, in a country trying to find its footing in the big wide world, right, the responsibilities of public life don't merely fall to a small elite, but must be shared by a larger number of people who begin their careers, right, in the practical pursuits of engineering and agriculture, and that they, as they take on the responsibilities of public life and public leadership, active citizenship, and leading roles in their own communities, will benefit from an education in the fields that we know today as the humanities and social sciences. Tonight, we are about 7,000 miles and 160 years removed from the passage of the Land Grant Colleges Act. But the students, staff, and faculty members who have contributed to the 2021 edition of Best Writing are the unanticipated but absolutely critical and legitimate heirs of Justin Morrill's vision. You have committed yourselves not only to the industrial pursuits and professions of life, but also to that larger and liberal education that will prepare you for the world's business, for the responsibilities of active citizenship, the burdens of thoughtful and ethical leadership, and the courageous pursuit of truth and beauty in a world that very sorely needs both. You all here tonight in Qatar are the future of another new nation finding its footing in the world and still taking its first important steps toward its own bright horizon. And as I have browsed through this new volume that was put in my hands today, and I've read stories about people confronting and overcoming their fears and anxieties, coming to terms with the challenges of life, finding comfort in simple pleasures, embracing friendships and new experiences, and being brave in the face of adversity. I find myself nothing but hopeful about your individual futures and nothing but hopeful about the future you represent for this country and for this campus. I want to thank and congratulate all of the authors and artists whose work fills the pages of Best Writing. I also want to express my very sincere gratitude to the editors and the steering committee. As Dean Malave did, I particularly note the excellent and pivotal work of my colleague, Misty Rudd, whose vision and leadership have shaped Best Writing from its inception. I am proud of all of you, and once again, congratulations on your great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ura, for your words of enlightenment and encouragement. Now, I would like to welcome the program coordinator of the Center for Teaching and Learning, a title which does not justify her job because she does everything from designing the interior of the CTL to providing me therapy for 4 years. Please welcome the co-editor of this year's edition, Ms. Sahar Murray.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this very kind introduction, Safan. I really miss you coming by my office every now and then. The yellow chair is still there and waiting for you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many of you joining our event tonight. I want to tell you a little bit about the history of the publication. And I will start by last year, Dr. Misty Rudd officially asked me to be the co-editor of this wonderful publication. I felt excited, honored, and a little bit intimidated. Although I've been part of the publication since its inception in 2014, serving as a co-editor this year has been a growth step for me. Remembering how this publication started puts a smile on my face. For those of you who don't know the story, let me tell you. It was Monday, the 20th of January, 2014. I was working as the branding and production coordinator in the Office of Marketing and Communications when I received a very flattering email titled Student Publication Project for Tamook from Dr. Rudd. In this email, she introduced herself and explained what the abbreviation Tamook means, not knowing that I was sitting in my office located just one level below her. Dr. Alan Weber, whom I've previously collaborated with on Weill Cornell Medicine's student publication, had recommended me to her. Dr. Rudd had just received the necessary funding to make this project a reality. But, there's always a but, the publication had to be printed and published no later than 30th of June that year. I could tell how passionate and thrilled she was about the project and how determined she was to make it happen within this very tight production timeline. It was truly an ambitious plan, since at that point in time, no student writing had been collected. Needless to say, everything came together at the very last minute to create the first edition of the student anthology, which was lavishly celebrated. Each year since, the process gradually improved, the layout became more sophisticated, and the publication has grown into the tradition it has become today. It has been a privilege to be part of the Best Writing Committee for the last couple of years. And having served in various roles, I learned deeply about all the parts that need to come together for the successful publication. You may wonder what we consider a successful publication. It is the coming together of members of our community who recognize and want to amplify the power of the written word. I'm humbled by the courageousness of all the writers who've contributed to this year's publication. It is indeed not easy to write, and it is not easy to publicly share one's story. Thank you so much. I'll give it back to Safin.
Thank you, Ms. Sahar, for sharing with us the story of how best writing began. Now, I would like to welcome the pioneer of the best writing series, the person who continuously inspires students to come out of their comfort zones, and the person who opens the floodgates of my thoughts. Dr. Misty, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Safin. I loved hearing some of the original details of that origin story that Sahar shared tonight. Although it's kind of embarrassing because it shows that I just jump into things without knowing all the information and the details. But I've come to accept that that's kind of typical of me, right? So, and maybe nothing would ever get done if we waited until we knew exactly how to do it. This project started, yes, I've mentioned this before, out of envy, which is a powerful motivator because Cornell had their book of student writing. And I knew as an English teacher at Texas A&M that our students had stories to tell, and they had lots of writing ability, and they wrote poetry, and they wrote in many genres. And I felt like I was, as an English teacher, as the teacher, being kind of selfish and greedy. I was the only one who got to see these things. And I knew that there was a larger audience for this. And I think that first edition, when a parent came up to me and said, thank you so much for having this publication, because before my daughter was an engineering student, she was a writer, and now she can be both. And so I do think that there's a really important place for best writing at Texas A&M. The theme this year, Safin did such a good job of talking about moving forward. Well, in the book, there's a section called, this is the first time this year, about the title. And the title, the idea for the title actually came from Vanessa Lena. And so I didn't warn Vanessa about, or I didn't ask her to, she's going to read later. She's going to read the last piece, I think. But I'm going to quote from Vanessa because it's so beautiful what she wrote. Vanessa doesn't know this is happening, so this is a surprise for her. So here's what she wrote. When the Best Writing Committee brainstormed for the theme for this year's edition, I thought moving forward would be engaging because this is what we have all been trying to do since the global pandemic started, to move forward. When the coronavirus emerged last year, the world came to a halt and it upended our day-to-day lives. Through it all, we learned to adapt. We have accepted the fact that this virus is not going away soon. With the virus around us, our lives now revolve around uncertainty, yet we are all trying to make the best of what we have, do the best we can to keep going, and move forward with our lives in what we now call the new normal. So thank you for writing that, Vanessa, and for giving us the idea. And I also want to acknowledge staff because there's been more and more contributions from staff over the years. And we also do a best writing workshop series for staff. And especially during the pandemic, and I said this at last year's launch, but I want to reiterate it here tonight. It's the staff that kept us going and that helped us switch to remote practically overnight, right? And that's just absolutely amazing. And so I want to honor them, and best writing in a sense begins and ends with Vanessa's words. So I think that that's kind of a nice tribute to both Vanessa and staff. Now I'd like to read just a little bit in medias res, dropped in the midst of some of my introduction to this year's edition. And so I'm going to start on page, I don't know, page I am 8, if people are following along. I frequently tell my students that the things that make our lives more difficult, think the pandemic, right? The obstacles that seem to separate us from our goals and dreams are actually great topics to write about. And the best place to begin when writing your story, it can be the hour or day or month before we make an important decision, the moment of much mental turmoil as we are deciding who or what or how to be Yet nothing is more enticing to a reader than this, to be invited into the gut-wrenching internal journey of another as they are navigating one of life's more important decisions. If you have the guts to write about it, I tell my first-year students, then I will find the guts to read it. We could do worse than to follow Hemingway's advice, write hard and clear about what hurts. If you read this entire 8th volume, you will encounter the courage of many fledgling writers mid-flight as they share snapshots of their lives and the beginnings of their writing journeys with more than just their teachers and classmates. Despite the social distancing that pandemic precautions have required of us, we are still human beings who need to feel that our words are heard. Writing is one way of satisfying this need while connecting us to a community that many of us have felt deprived of. In this way, writing can lead to healing, which all of us could benefit from in a fractured and fearful world. It is perhaps not coincidental that for this volume, there was an increase in poetry submissions. In times of uncertainty or upheaval, in the second year of a pandemic, which surely qualifies one of these times, we often look to poets to help us make sense of the changes we are undergoing. My definition of poet includes anyone who pays close attention to their choices and usage of words. And for years now, I've been calling every student in my writing courses a poet engineer. But if being an engineer means to focus on finding solutions to problems in order to aid humanity, then perhaps all of us, students, staff, faculty, and our families are poet engineers, acting both as artists who inspire and practitioners who enact the changes we'd like to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Misty. Now I would ask Ms. Polina Snitko to take over the floor for the presentation of the cover photo.
Thank you, Safin. Howdy, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm very happy to be part of the Best Writing Committee this year. And it's been a great pleasure to work with all the committee members and students on this wonderful project. I also had an opportunity to serve as the co-chair of the photo committee, and together with Ira Satyavan, who has been a great help in everything, we had a mission to select the best photo for this year's book cover so that it captures the theme moving forward. We received 79 photographs from 16 students, and I'd like to thank every student who participated in this contest. There were a lot of fantastic entries, and it wasn't easy to choose only one photo. The winning photo was selected by a panel of judges in 2-round voting, and every year we do our best to have judges with diverse backgrounds. So we invite faculty and staff not only from different departments in TAMQ, but also from other universities around Education City. And I'd like to thank this year's judges, Niha Rashid from Marcom, Sean Torres from Library, Dr. Shunas Einbar from Executive Office, Mawad Al-Aradi, our former student, class 2019, Cheryl Garcia from Business Operations, and Reem Salo from VCU Arts Qatar for dedicating their time and efforts to choose the best photo, and without them, this contest wouldn't be possible. The top 10 photos are featured in chapter 4, which is on page 169. It's titled Seeing the Art in the Everyday. So you can have a look at these photos and read students' reflections on them. And finally, I'm delighted to announce that the winning photo belongs to our graduate student, Murtaza Khan. Congratulations, Murtaza. I have your photo here. I just need to switch off my virtual background so everyone can see it. Yes. Here's the photo. As you can see, it's a tunnel made of crystals, and it's an interactive installation in Musharraf downtown. And Murtaza says that for him, this image is the perfect metaphor for the year 2021. So we'd like to hear why. Now I'm going to pass it to Murtaza so he can talk more about it.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Olana. What more could I say? So basically, I can say that, so I mean, I'm into music, and a lot of my friends know that. Daft Punk, Chemical Brothers were two of my biggest two bucket list like music acts, and I've graced the music scene for decades. I was fortunate to witness one of them, Chemical Brothers, live, thankfully. Still, the former act, Daft Punk split up this year, which was kind of sad, but and that left my bucket list dream hanging. Nonetheless, I mentioned these acts basically for the one simple reason because I enjoy them. Apart from the music, for their use of light and projection displays in their live performances. So, light as a medium has the power to illustrate our mind visually, and it's, in my opinion, what kind of drives us every day. But if you look at it from retrospect, how do you create something that's so routine and omnipresent, all the light that goes into our eyes, into something that's more artistic? That is the challenge that I guess basically visual artists take. And I, for one, am always on the lookout for such visual installations wherever I can find them in nature or in something else specific. So my journey as a photographer is not just to click, but to kind of see beyond the camera lens. I've never been a fan of finding the correct settings. I'm not worried about my aperture or shutter speeds because I've not really care about the expensive equipment to invest in. So eventually, as a photographer, the first thing that you realize is that you capture with your eyes. And keeping that in mind, I was just going around my photography escapades around February in the start of this year. So I was earlier at the Pearl, and then I went to Musharraf, and I just kept looking around. And then this installation, it's called Crystallation, precisely located at Sikkat Al Wadi in Musharraf downtown. So it's an interactive installation which features 7 gates that are geometrically aligned to sort of create like a mesmeric field in the shape of a tunnel. And visitors can actually contribute to this installation by purchasing the glass crystals, and then they can hang there wherever they like. So when I came upon Crystallation, I actually found the tunnel completely empty, and that was lucky enough for me to take a picture that I envisaged. A tunnel that was sort of just glistening at the dark of the night. Illuminated tunnels, I'm sure, are nothing new. I'm pretty sure, as they say in the metaphor, the light at the end of the tunnel, but this is something a bit more different, I guess, because this picture for me was a perfect metaphor for the year 2021. Last year in 2020, as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic had brought the entire world to a halt. Empty roads, the safety protocols, the looming worry of who will fall victim to the disease. STEM, however, coupled with human will and togetherness, was able to put the gloves back on and turn this around. With increased social cooperation and thanks to the availability of vaccines, we now enter 2021 filled with a lot of hope, a lot of optimism, and a chance that maybe this might lead to a new, longer road towards a new norm. Perhaps one that is probably maskless. The way I see it in this photo is this: a light shining array into the hope of tomorrow. All the people around us, our loved ones, friends, families, colleagues, both in the community here at TAMIQ, the various EC campuses around us, the state of Qatar, and everywhere in the world, are all striving to enter this tunnel of 2021 in that very spirit. The spirit of togetherness of everyone to hear stories, the desire for change, and the fight for injustices that people face globally is uniting us even more than ever as we progress through this year. So I hope while you all read this edition of Best Writing, you will be able to relate with the stories. And despite our many individualities, our shared experiences will hopefully allow us to find the light and move forward for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nitko, and thank you, Murtaza, to capture such a beautiful scenery, capturing the essence of the theme. And congratulations to you for winning the contest.
Thank you so much.
Now for the most exciting segment of the event, we have lined up for you 11 of the best writers who will give you a small peek of their best writing piece about their journey of moving forward. If you would like to follow along with the readers, we have put the link to the electronic version of the best writing copy. When the readers take the spotlight, you can see the page number of the pieces in the slide, and you can navigate to that page and follow along. With that being said, I would like to welcome our first author, Fatima Abu Halika.
Hello, everybody. My poem is called Fixed Forward. I will first read my reflection. I wrote this poem to express what moving forward is to many people. It is not as simple as looking towards the future or the present. It can be through a self-reflection on the past and present, while identifying that they cannot possibly be changed unless we look forward to what can be there for us. I look back to what I had and think of all I can. Today and tomorrow both start the same, but end up on bad terms. If moving forward was my mission, then why can't I go forward? The past will always be there for us, but now what will we become? Are we here for nothing, or are we here for something? Is it my destiny, or what is my destiny? If you don't find your purpose, then try to resurface. A life with no purpose is better than a life with no reason. Take a look ahead at what you will have, says the girl with the gray booked cloud. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima, for such powerful words. Next up, we have Al-Jawahra Al-Thani.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be reading a brief excerpt from a piece that I wrote about failing a class for the first time in my life, in my first semester at TAMUQ. In this piece, I discussed the challenges and emotions I faced dealing with failure and the lessons I learned with it. I hope you enjoy my piece titled My First Failure. When I joined college to pursue mechanical engineering, I knew that I would enjoy my classes thoroughly and hopefully excel in them. I had succeeded in my high school education effortlessly because my parents always inspired me to be the best at what I did. Little did I know how difficult it would be to navigate through college. Throughout my first semester at university, I must admit I slacked a little at the beginning. However, when I realized university wasn't going to be as easy as high school, I made sure to pick up the pace and worked as hard as I possibly could to get the results I wanted. On the last Sunday of my first semester at university, they sent an email to inform the students that the faculty will post our grades the next day. I knew that I had procrastinated in the beginning of the semester, especially since it was my first semester at university, when I was still figuring out how everything worked. So the announcement made me anxious and worried. I tried to distract myself as much as I possibly could. I called some friends, spent some time with my family, and packed for a trip I was going to be taking during my winter break. Yet, no matter what I did, my mind always came back to thinking about my results. After getting a few hours of sleep, it was time to see my results. As I logged onto the portal, my heart was racing. I had a feeling something was going to go wrong. Part of me wanted to ignore my results, not check them so as to prevent myself from being upset. However, I knew that delaying it would not only improve my grades, so I just knew that I had to rip off the Band-Aid. The second I opened my results, I saw the letter D next to calculus. I felt demoralized that I had just managed to fail my first class, especially in calculus, out of all classes. Me, the girl who was always great at calculus in high school, the girl who was only getting A's. Anger, denial, and frustration filled my mind immediately after checking my grades. I felt like dashing into the department and giving my professor an explanation for my poor performance, since I was sure I had a valid reason for it didn't reflect my abilities. I had failed my first class ever, which came with a lot of negative impact on me mentally, as well as shock from my friends and family who continued to support me regardless. My friends who knew me from high school knew that I was always at the top of my class in calculus and couldn't believe that I failed. They told me that sometimes these things happen and that I should try to take it as motivation to do well next time instead of letting this affect my self-esteem. Thank you.
Thank you, Al-Jawahra. You're so brave to talk about such an experience, but you have also shown us how to pick yourself up. Next up, we have Nicholas Vashakidze.
Yes, hello everyone. This story that I submitted, it's actually a story of my life. It's something that happened to me, and I was able to reflect it on the paper. It was my very first engineering project way before Texas A&M. I was commissioned by one of my higher-ups to build a Tesla coil. And this single event not only defined my professional career, it made me sure that I wanted to pursue electrical engineering. It also helped me to grow as a person. And I think it is beautiful how those two things can be intertwined together. So this little snippet that I'm going to read from my story is a very last part, and I think it sums up this point very well. So the journey was torturous. I burned my fingers while soldering on 2 separate occasions. My eyes were genuinely hurting from so much squinting to match the damned cables together. My room was a mess and everything was going south. Late Thursday night at 2:45 a.m., I was able to light the fluorescent light bulb wirelessly, a scenery which melted my heart. All the hard work, all the frustration was finally worth it. I felt a sense of pride because I finally did something myself without my teachers or parents or grandparents. I felt grown. The soldering iron wasn't a Jedi's weapon of choice. It was a serious tool for serious occasions. My Tesla coil didn't feel like a Lego building anymore. It felt like a real circuit, which I made. I laughed a lot the next day. I was happy with myself because the work I put in spoke for itself through all the wows and pictures I got with parents. There was no need to say a word about my work when the magic was happening right in front of me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicholas, and congratulations on successfully completing your project. Up next, we have Hiam Al-Mullah.
Good evening. This piece talks about the struggle that a student faces mentally without really knowing about it, but is obvious to others. It shows that no matter what position the person is in, whether happy or sad, the feeling they have inside will always overshadow. These points are further discussed in the research. The story I'm about to read is a scenario showing the day in the life of a struggling student. I've seen such behavior in real life through friends and was told when I conducted the interview with Dr. Steve Wilson that I myself have such characteristics. That conversation linked to me that mental health is at the core of perfectionism, and it completely changed my point of view of the writing. Here it is, Perfectionism, the Road to Failure. You're not doing well enough in school, Mother said. What are my friends going to say about me when they find out? I got up to get going to school when I was greeted with an angry, frustrated, and disappointed look on my mother's face. I apologized and made my way out to the bus stop. Why am I never enough? I thought to myself. It is lunch break. I'm sitting alone in the cafeteria and having a cheese sandwich that my mother packed for me. I felt sad eating it. I couldn't get the image of her disappointed face out of my head. I am sitting alone on the big blue rectangular shaped table. Children were running around screaming with laughter and joy. I miss those days. We began the second semester of school. I had just finished the first semester with an A+ score. I'm not happy about it, but gladly my mother is. I don't see the angry face anymore, and I haven't been compared to anyone recently. I am not happy about it. Moments later, my math teacher approaches me and questions me. Hey, sweetie, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Why wouldn't I be? You look a bit upset. Is it all going well? Good job on that A+, by the way. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm okay. Why was he questioning me? I don't think I look sad. I give off such a good image on the outside. I guess it is because I was sitting alone and he thought I needed a friend. Sweet. I am now in my first year of college. I have a 4.0 GPA and I'm doing extracurriculars. I've been studying so hard and for so long. It is my first year of college and I'm exhausted. At least my mother is happy. I made so many new friends. They're really cool and fun to hang out with. I like them a lot. But what if they don't like me? What if they're using me for my intelligence? No, they like me because I'm a fun person. But what if they talk about me once I leave the table? Am I good enough for them? I cry every night. I study and I cry every night in my small matchbox-shaped room. My purple wall calms me down. I glance over to my painting of sea turtles swimming to the surface. There's a weight on my chest, and I don't know how to get rid of it. I'm slowly losing my appetite and my grades are dropping. My mother's angry face makes a comeback. I eat once a day now if I force myself to. I have lost over 10 kilograms. My face looks tired but happy. I start wearing makeup to college. I look okay. At least my grades are good and I look skinny enough to become a model. At least my mother is happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayam. That was really powerful. And thank you for showing another perspective of student life in college. Up next, we have Sean Torres.
Thank you. This piece is called You Are Not Alone. You are not alone. The injured world is shrinking. Fiber optic sutures constrict, drawing together gaping wounds and continents. They coil around cities and branch through oceans, a cold, clear carrier of warm white waves. The stitches throb with the pangs of change, and the rich ichor of the world oozes through the cracks. But it is healing, and you are not alone. Streets and hallways have cracked like empty veins. Disused and abandoned, they fall into dust. No one mourns them. No one can. Instead, we mourn for our families and our freedoms and ourselves. We mourn for routine, for safety, for certainty. Our rage and our fears are screamed only into the silent darkness of our own minds, but you are not alone. Songs are told and stories are sung by the flickering lights of diodes and pixels. We gather in apartments and shops and palaces and shacks, each individual, but all together. Billions of pinpoints of light in a dark night sky, connected by words and pictures and time and hope. We are not alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for such a beautiful poem. I can definitely relate to it because I just left my home after 23 years in a new place. And thank you for reminding me I'm not alone. Next up, we have Mona Amani.
Good evening. In today's society, it is unfortunately very common for people to look down upon the special needs community. Some factors for such mindsets can be due to lack of knowledge, lack of exposure, or false stereotypes that have been placed upon this community. Unlike those who look down upon people with special needs, I have a very soft spot for them. So after witnessing the mistreatment of multiple special needs kids inside and outside of Qatar, I knew that some change had to be made. I have witnessed families who try to hide their special needs child away from society due to feeling embarrassed or ashamed. I have also witnessed some parents hitting their children when they show poor behavior in public, when it's completely out of their control. The following piece is an ethnographic study on the special needs community, and I hope that along with the research that I have conducted, these negative stigmas around people with disabilities can be changed so that everyone can learn to be accepting of one another. In order to conduct this ethnographic study, a survey was sent out to all TAMIQ faculty, staff, and students, and an interview was conducted with 2 women who are planning on opening their own special needs center. From the survey that was sent out, there were a lot of significant points that stood out, and one of them was discovering the discomfort levels that people said they'd face if they were to be related to someone with special needs. 93% of the members who responded said that they'd feel uncomfortable, and out of the total number of responders, about 50% of them said that they'd feel extremely uncomfortable. It was quite surprising to find such a high percentage of people claiming that they'd be extremely uncomfortable about the idea of being related to someone who has special needs. In addition to that, some of the takeaways from the survey were further elaborated on in the interviews that were conducted. The interviews were done with a Qatari mother who has a 15-year-old son with dyspraxia and a Malaysian mother who has a 13-year-old son with autism. When the topic of negative stigma was mentioned, the Qatari woman brought up an interesting story about an encounter that she had with another Qatari woman. A lady once came up to her, pulled her aside, and told her, "I need to tell you something, but don't tell anybody. I heard that you have a son with learning difficulties. I think there's something up with my son, but please, please, don't tell the rest." The woman who was being interviewed mentioned that, unfortunately, for some people, it is still considered a shame. Not to all, but some. In fact, the 2 women who were interviewed mentioned that when they open up their own center, one of the things they definitely plan to include is to offer workshops for all household members to attend, such as parents, siblings, nannies, drivers, etc. That way, everyone in the family can become educated and learn how to cope and deal with such situations. During the interviews, they also mentioned that one of the best ways to alleviate the negative stigma is through education, awareness, and exposure. If people start to become educated, especially from a young age, they will learn to accept differences sooner. And one of the best ways to become educated is through exposure and through the process of integrating people with special needs into our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you for attempting to educate us about the special needs community. I hope we will learn to move forward from this situation after reading your piece. Up next, we have Muhammad Khalid Ahmed.
Hello, guys. So this poem is called Ala Man Ashiqna, and it's simply a message. It's a message from someone who grew up seeing the suffering of his people. under a corrupted criminal regime while he was being in another country. This is a message to my beloved country, my beloved people who were and still fighting against corruption, against oppression, against state violence, against the absence of basic human rights. I remember that I wrote this poem on June of 2019, like when the Sudanese revolution was going one of its hardest phases after the massacre of the 3rd of June, where people were faced with military power. The revolutionists saw their brothers and sisters get killed by the military. They went and said that they support them. So this is just a message for them that we will win, that we will eventually win, and we will build the country that we all dreamt about. على من عشقنا على من عشقنا سلاما لا حدود له وعلى المعشوقين في الدنيا السلامة على من يرى ولا يرى الدنيا إلا بحبه على الشاهرين في وجه عالمهم حساما يا أيها الشعر يا أيها الشعر يا فردوس عزلتي يا قاتل الصبر في الجلدين أزمانا اذكر التيه إن التيه حاكمني بعينيك اللتين بها الولهان ما نام فداء العشق أفديك يا سكني توردين القلب للسكرات أزمانا بلادي بلادي هي الحبيبة والرفيقة عيونها الخضراء سهول ذات زرع تواري كل حزن وتبعث في القلب الحنين بلادي بلادي هي الصديقة والعشيقة هي الحقيقة في سراب تخالج كل روح وترسل للقلب الشجون بلادي بلاد الموت بلادي بلاد القهر يموت الموت فيها في الدقيقة 60 مرة ويبعث حيا بعد حين أصلي كلما مررت بشارع ورأيت شيخا طاعنا في السن يرسل صوته عبر السماء ينادي زبونا طامعا في بضع رزق يشتري منه الطعام للجياع النائمين أصلي كلما مررت بشارع ورأيت في نهايته المواكب نحو القنابل تندفع لا تعرف الخوف للخوف يعرفها وكأنهم في خصام وعداوة أزلية منذ آلاف السنين فلتحيا نضالات الشعوب وليسقط الظلم ولتشرق الشمس الجليلة مرة أخرى على أبناء جلدتنا بالنصر الذي طال انتظاره ولا يأتين الفجر بالنصر المبين ولا يأتين الفجر بالنصر المبين. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalid. We hope the people of your community and all the oppressed ones will move forward towards victory and peace. Up next, we have Jude Alwad.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good evening. For those who don't know me, my name is Jude Alwad, and I'm an electrical engineering graduate from Texas A&M. Right now, I'm pursuing a degree in computer science and engineering at HBKU. I'm also working at Deloitte. So TAMQ has paved the way for me to achieve great things, alhamdulillah. A few months ago, Dr. Misty reached out to me and a very good friend of mine, Zainab Barouti, to write parting words for the best writing book this year. We were so excited to be part of this and be able to give back to the community that has given us so much. Unfortunately, Zainab couldn't be with us today because she has class, but you should definitely give her a piece a read because it's really great. As many of you probably, my journey at TAMQ had its ups and downs. But something that always kept me going forward is knowing that with every hardship comes ease, which is the title of my writing. I hope you guys like it. With the theme being moving forward, my mind went to many different places. However, the one thought that was always at the back of my mind is the verse from Surah Al-Sharh. This verse literally translates to, indeed, with every hardship comes ease. To me, this is very beautiful and gives me a lot of hope that no matter how bad things seem at any specific point, things have their own way of working out and will always get better. I always fall back to this ideology when I'm faced with a hardship. In my 4 years at Texas A&M, similar to many other students, I was faced with many challenges. These challenges came in many different forms. For example, getting bad grades, being stressed out with the amount of work, losing friendships, losing family members, the COVID crisis, and lockdown, and so on. Instead of dwelling on these problems, I was able to wholeheartedly believe better days are on their way. If you lose something, it will be replaced with something better. And even if we can't see it in the meantime, we have innumerable blessings that we should be thankful for. Reflecting on these blessings will improve our lives and allow us to have a peace of mind and clarity, which translates to true happiness. Thank you for listening, and thank you for everyone that has made this event so great.
Thank you, Jude, for reminding about how we used to study late at night and then not get good grades, but then now we have been able to move forward. Up next, we have Ghadir Al-Haddad.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ghadir Al-Haddad. And I'm a graduate from Texas A&M University, class of 2018, from Chemical Engineering program. And today I will share with you the poem I wrote for this year, Best Writing book. The title of the poem is Slow Down. Here and there, it is everywhere, no matter the color, religion, or origin, no matter if a king or servant, rich or poor, no matter if a doctor or patient, it doesn't differentiate far or near, the storm is here. Passing through us with stress and disappointment, leaving us entrapped with doubts and not many answers. Even if we closed our doors and ignored the rules, it is there going up and down, changing life every day. But a pandemic can give us lessons, teach us to plant a tree or paint a river, tell us to slow down and sense the small details, aware of ourselves and others, responsible for things we didn't care about, making safety an issue again. It is softly telling us a tale, showing us our instinct and reality. We are not individuals, but communities. We are not distant, but connected. We are all as one and belong to one place. Fast or slow, we can heal and develop, find a solution or change over time. It doesn't matter if it stays or goes away. We are adapting and we are okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghadir. Thank you for showing us that if we have to move forward, we have to do it together. Next up, we have Muhammad Saad.
Thank you, Safin. Howdy and good evening, everyone. Today I will be reading the reflection and an extract from my piece, A Dream of a Pandemic-Free World. When the virus hit, it changed everyone's lives. Daily routines were affected and so many things were put on a standstill. The piece that I have written is about my personal experience of living through the pandemic. Sharing experiences, helping each other, and being there for one another is what has got us through this. This piece is a reminder that you were not the only one that had their life turned upside down, and we were all in this together. My experience, along with many other students in the world, teaches us something: to never take anything for granted. Who would have thought a couple of years back that the current state of the world would be such that students in the developed world would not be able to go to schools and campuses? Many of us took this for granted. Similarly, we take so many other things for granted. For example, food on our tables or access to clean water at all times. What this pandemic has taught us is that we only understand the value of something once we do not have easy access to it. While we must appreciate the value of the smallest things in our lives, we should also strive to help others who are not as blessed and fortunate as we are. If humanity ever forgot the idea of unity, this pandemic has been a perfect reminder. The fact that most countries committed to the World Health Organization guidelines of lockdowns, washing hands, and social distancing shows how the world came together to curb a common challenge. As a result, most countries flattened their curves and controlled the virus. Nations put aside their diplomatic self-interests to create relief funds and hold conventions to share ideas on how to contain the virus. With so many negative events occurring worldwide, seeing nations work together was a wonderful sight. It gives us hope. Humanity is facing the biggest problems it has ever faced. For example, climate change, depleting water resources, overpopulation, etc. To see governments displaying the ability to work in unity and put their differences aside while fighting the pandemic is an indication that we can undoubtedly combat any global issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Saad, for showing us the goodness in hardships. Now, for the last but not the least, we have Miss Vanessa Lina.
Thank you, Safin. Tonight, I'd be reading a simple poem that I wrote about a phrase that has been my mantra every time I feel down or in a difficult state. This is entitled, This Too Shall Pass. When things are uncertain and all seems to be in vain, it won't always be this way, for this too shall pass. When loneliness overtakes and you feel your heart will break, cry if you must, but also chant, this too shall pass. If you're worried, afraid, and things are spiraling, if you feel that life is pushing you too hard, remember, troubles and hardships don't always last. They too shall pass. When success blinds your gaze, pride and easiness lead you to laze, and all could vanish in haste, please know, these too shall pass. So no matter how dark the moment, be still, calm and quiet. Breathe and inhale the breeze of peace, for these too shall pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Vanessa. And I remember exactly the same feelings that you used to project when I was a tutor in the CTL. And with that, we come to the end of this segment. Thank you all the readers for sharing your stories and empowering the gathering. We have seen lots of aspects of moving forward. Moving forward is not only about moving on from something bad. It could also mean to leave your comfort zone and starting something new. And that's the title of my best writing piece, Something New. In this piece, I challenged my fellow juniors to think about doing something aside of engineering. The pandemic has shown us the importance of having multidimensional skills. And while writing this piece, I also challenged myself to start something new. Taking inspiration from my 3 previous best writing submissions, I decided to start a new blog where I write about technology and education. It's been 3 months since I started writing. As I move forward from TAMUQ, I would like to say to Dr. Misty, I present myself as an engineer and a writer. I thank the Best Writing Committee to invite me back to TAMUQ to participate in this wonderful evening. Let me once again welcome Dr. Misty and Ms. Sahar for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Safin. This was such a beautiful reading, everyone. I really enjoyed hearing it, and it just translates so differently when we actually hear you say your own words. So thank you for that. Now the evening is coming to an end, and of course, all of this wouldn't have been possible without the great support of the Best Writing Committee. So I just want a huge thank you to all of you, and I want to read the names of all of our Best Writing Committee members, and feel free to just unmute yourself so you can pop up on everybody's screen for a second. So this year, our Best Writing Committee was composed of 4 undergraduates, 3 graduate students, 5 staff members, and 3 faculty members. Al-Jawahir Al-Thani, thank you. Midhad Javed, Murtaza Khan, Rinith Regutna, Sara Al-Banna, Sara Amani, Van Baloro, Hira Setyawan, Olena Snitko, Dr. Mary Queen, Dr. Muhammad Fadlmullah, Dr. Misty Rudd, Shauna Loy, and of course, Vanessa Lina. Thank you so much. Dr. Misty, I'll let you add and continue.
Yeah, there's so many other people to thank. You got to read the acknowledgements in the book. We of course, thanks the deans for the funding and support, and the CTL and liberal arts program. All the people who contributed, whose pieces weren't even published, because we could not do this if people didn't take the step to share their photos, their pieces. And so we couldn't do any of this without the community that is TAMUQ. Let's see, I guess I want to read like the last paragraph of my introduction, which is on page 9. To move through the tragedy of this pandemic without experiencing any loss is highly improbable, if not impossible. If you didn't lose a loved one, then you still may have lost time, hope, celebrations, and progress towards your dreams. Writing is one way, and in my biased view, the best way to feel our rage, dip into our grief, and then move forward. In the stillness of the pandemic, I have learned to listen to a quieter voice within, one that has been telling me for a while that it is time for me to let go of leading best writing, signaled in a frequency that I have finally tuned in to hear. I'm honored to have had the privilege of learning from all the writers and readers represented by the series over the years. It means the world to me that you have trusted our community with your stories and words. I have no doubt that I'll be leaving best writing in capable hands with a creative and caring committee. I always say it's the best writing committee, led by Sahar Mari and Dr. Mary Queen, who will be taking over for me. In the meantime, you can count on me to keep reading and writing and supporting the series from the sidelines, cheering for every writer's right to be heard. And I don't know if it's just me tonight, but this just feels like the best reading ever. Like every reading was so precious. And even though they had all these choices of backgrounds, and I don't know, mine's coding, this is as close as I'm going to get to coding, I think. But every speaker, to me, it seemed to me, chose the background that was perfect for their piece. And I just think that that's just amazing. It's just really powerful. And you've all really affected me tonight. And that's what writing is about. It's about connecting and joining us. So I thank each and every one of the brave readers tonight. Sahar, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, so the very last thing that I want to leave you with, of course, we want everybody to have their physical copy of the book. So they will be sitting out inside of our building, and you'll see some digital signage that will guide you to where you need to pick it up. If you're entering the building, you will find a copy of the book. So please go get yours. I'm also going to say this year has been the biggest as of yet. We have a lot of wonderful features in there. And then the last, very last thing of tonight's event is we would like to commemorate this event with a little Zoom photo. So if you're willing, I'm going to encourage all of our writers, please put on your cameras. We will take a screenshot and then close off the event. All right, let me just get my screens ready. Okay, so if you want to be in the Zoom picture, please open up your camera and I'll do a couple so we get everybody smiling. All right, great. And one last one, don't forget to smile. Thank you, everyone. Is there anything else you want to end with, Dr. Misty?
I just don't want it to end, right? But you know, go ahead. Yeah, Dr. Mary Queen, will you say something, please?
Yes, I would like to say thank you, Dr. Misty, for an extraordinary contribution to our community and to the students and their families. It's going to be quite a challenge to take on the mantle. And all I can say is I'm honored to have such a committee and such a co-chair to work with and lead us to the next step.